Today I'm speaking to former Man United footballer Ian Fitzpatrick. How's it going, mate? You okay?
Yeah, not too bad. How are you?
Yeah, all good, all good. Just yeah, work as normal, and yeah, here I am now. So, how's your day been so far? I know off air you said you're struggling at the minute with a bit of COVID and stuff.
Yeah, unfortunately, I got a bit of COVID. I've had a tough month. So I went away with work to Abu Dhabi, caught the flu, come back, a couple of weeks off, and now I've got COVID. So yeah, I'm on
Nightmare.
lockdown. I'm on
Nightmare. So
lockdown again.
you
It's not
mentioned
too
work
bad.
there, and you mentioned
I
that
can
you were
slow down.
abroad
I can
in
slow down a bit, so it's not too bad.
yeah. No, I understand. I understand. So you mentioned work there, and you mentioned you were abroad in Abu Dhabi. So talk to us. What's work look like nowadays?
Yeah, so I am a former United player and a United fan, so I work on the blue side. Well, I have done for the last 10 years, which is a bit weird, but yeah, it's an amazing place. I'm very fortunate that I'm surrounded around good people and good resources and good players. And sort of my role is sort of head of coaching for the pre-academy and City Select, which is I sort of work with a team of people to recruit the best players within our catchment area to put them in the academy at the start of the journey.
Okay.
And also I do little bits across other age groups as well. So yeah, I'm still involved in football, but giving it back now instead of playing.
Yeah. What's it like on the other side of the fence? Obviously being a player for such a long time, and then obviously making that step up to obviously coaching and stuff. What you're doing at the moment?
To be honest, I never thought I'd be a coach. I think everyone says that. You just kind of like gravitate towards it. It's somebody always told me if you're good at something, you should do it. And I'm fortunate I've been around, in the football game for a long time now. Obviously as a player, and when we was at the Little Shaw as well, all the many moons ago. And I just sort of gravitated into it. I kind of finished playing around about 29, 30. Sort of self-retired myself a little bit. I was going to go abroad to play over in Singapore. My missus at the time, we just had a child. And then obviously, while I was waiting for that to clear, found out I was having triplets. So it was it kind of like changed the whole dynamic of where I was. I was still in and around at Shrewsbury town, and I'd just been paid up or I was on loan. And I just decided, I needed a change. I needed to find some more stability, some more consistency, because ultimately you're not going to, at 30, you're not going to move back into the top levels. So your journey really is from them ages or at that level. It's just grabbing contracts here and there and working your way through up and down the country. And it's not ideal when you've got a family. So what I did is I sort of took a bit of time out. I had a bit of a back and a hamstring injury, took a bit of time out, went to university, did a degree in sports development and coaching, and that was a shock to the system. I think that's the same for many people that play sport and focus on that. Going back into education was tough, and then I went into teaching, did my PGDE, and went to Manchester College for 4 years doing BTEC and MVQ sports. And then for some strange reason, I think I was doing my B license with a coach, Gareth Wally. Ages ago, and he just recommended me, and I somehow just ended up at City, and it's just happened ever since that day, really.
Well, you mentioned earlier that you went back to the classroom, back into that environment of learning again.
Yeah,
You mentioned you had some difficulties there. So what exactly did you find difficult?
I just don't know. First of all, it's sitting behind a desk or going to a library and reading and writing and going back to the old school techniques, because yourself, when we was at Lilleshall, we didn't really do that much schoolwork. I think we only did about 5 or 6 GCSEs.
Yeah.
Then when you're your football club, you go to college and you do like an MVQ in leisure and tourism, and it was a tick box thing. And then you have like a window where you don't do anything for 7, 8, 9, 10 years. So it's like anything else. If you don't do anything like that for so long, and technology changes, going back into that environment was really tough, really tough. But hopefully, at the time I had support with my family. They helped me massively. So yeah, it made the transition a little bit easier.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned help there, and it's always important that you've got that support network, whether it be friends, family, or both, or even someone that you kind of maybe look up talk to me about like your transition. I know you touched on it a little bit, but talk to me about that whole like the thought process. Obviously, you had triplets, and obviously that's changed your mindset naturally. That would do. But talk to me about kind of stepping away from football and like hanging up your boots at that age, and how did it make you feel?
It's hard to explain. I think I think a lot of people have spoke about it. You just kind of do it and leave and just cut ties with it. But then many years later, it comes back as like not like grief, but like your thoughts and your memories and all the other things, and you miss it. You miss it, and even now, even though I'm involved in football and I'm coaching and I'm on the pitch most days, you do miss that element of playing and that being in and around your friends and teammates and getting success. So for me, it was. I knew the time was coming anyway. I was just drifting. I was up and down with injuries, up and down with consistency. And then obviously it was like fight or flight stuff. It was fortunate how it happened because it just kind of like, well, that's what you've got to do. That's what I'm going to have to do. And I just went and did it. And there was no looking back after that, really.
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, it's interesting because I've spoken to so many people kind of on the podcast and just in general. And you get a mixture of kind of, yeah, I miss it. I miss the banter in the dressing room, or I miss just being around teammates and stuff like that. And then you get a handful like myself who literally I don't miss any element of it really. And I don't know why that is. Maybe because it was my choice to kind of stop playing football. But again, everyone's different. If it's one of those situations where injury and then that's the end of it, then that's obviously a slightly different scenario, isn't it? So
yeah,
it's one of those things, really.
I think it's for me as well. When you're in an amazing facility and you go on the pitch and you see the grass and you see the nets, and you see how everything's moved forward, so advanced, so forward. You look and you think, Jesus, imagine if I was back playing in them days. We was at Lilleshall, we was carrying the mitre bags to the pitch. And the balls, if they'd probably kill you. Now the balls are just unbelievable. You hit them and they fly.
Yeah.
So I think it's just you look back and you think to yourself, God, we went to Norway and the Cup and we went to Brazil and it's like there was no pressure then. You didn't realise how lucky you was.
Yeah, 100%. Unfortunately, so obviously we did go to Norway and we won that tournament, and I remember scoring in the final as well. I think we were together. It was me, you, and Scotty Parker in the room together, weren't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was all right. The view was brilliant, but the room was crap.
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, I was selected to go to Brazil. But if you remember, I did my back, so I couldn't go. So I was probably good. I remember people coming back afterwards saying, "Oh, there's a guy called Ronaldinho who was like amazing," and I was like, "Okay."
I know. So we went to Brazil, and I don't like flying anyway. And we started flying, and it took about 10 hours to get to Sao Paulo. We spent a little bit of time in Sao Paulo. We played Sao Paulo's academy. I think we just landed, just arrived. It was just it was hot, and I think we got beat 3-0. It was an unbelievable academy. We was playing older, and then we had to get an internal flight from Sao Paulo to a place called Londrina. We had to fly in the jungle or something, and the plane was like this, bam, bam. And I remember being sick in this doggy bag, and this old thing was rubbing me back. And it was like, Jesus Christ. When you start speaking about it now, it all just starts coming back to you.
Yeah.
We played in their sort of one of their stadiums, and they just moved the ball so much better, so much more, more efficient. I think it was 3-1 in the end or something like that. But yeah, it was an amazing experience. The sad thing is we didn't have no social media then, no cameras, no nothing. So there's no real evidence of, yeah, look, you can show your kids all this. I don't even think there's anything out there that even existed.
No, yeah, mate. Imagine if there was, because obviously we were the cream of the crop, and then obviously for you to say you went there and they were just another level again, it's just scary. Talk to me about your transferable skills then. So, what do you think you've taken from being a professional footballer for all those years, and then obviously going into coaching and that side of it now? What transferable skills have you taken from there?
I think for me, it's personality and the social side of it. I know everyone speaks around the physical, the technical side, or the football stuff, but the actual the psychological and the social side of it is such an important thing. Handling yourself in the change room, mixing with peers, getting into confrontation, resolving matters, building up resilience and work ethic and being punctual and all these types of underlying skills that do form the base or the platform for any type of successful career. So you're kind of like learning them and having to deal with them daily without even knowing you're doing them. And then it's just a case of when you actually transfer from your sport into the industry, can you then bring or find that knowledge that you've got into the real world? And that's the challenge. And fortunate, I think that one of my biggest areas is communication and socially I get on with people. So it helps massively in the role that I'm doing anyway.
Yeah, 100%. And with regards to retirement, you remember back in our days, especially, it was always seen as like a bit of a negative conversation. You never really wanted to discuss it. And if you did, it was like, that's further down the line. Especially when I was speaking to like maybe older players and that, they never really wanted to engage with it. What are your thoughts on retirement? Do you think it should be approached in a different way?
Well, to be honest, I don't even think I've retired. I've not even signed anything to say I've retired. Still playing the staff games. No, I think definitely. I think you need a plan. Everybody needs a plan B. But getting into the mind of a young footballer that's so focused on preparation and training and performing, and then getting them to have another side angle or a side shift towards developing a career or something away and running alongside is very difficult. But I think it's so important. I really do. Do you remember when I think when we first got to Lilleshall, we sat in the auditorium and I remember it was all sat there where the gymnast place was. And I think it was Keith Blunt come in at the time. And he said, you're all sat here now, you know, all top players, you may think it, but there's only 3 or 4 of you that'll make it. The rest of you will be out of the game by the time you're 25. I was like, Jesus Christ. But that's the reality. That's what happened.
100%. And at that time, we were 14, still wet behind the ears, and everyone's obviously you're buzzing because you've been selected to obviously or potentially selected to represent your country at the age of 14. And at that time, you're obviously thinking, well, I've got a career in the game, or hopefully. But then obviously to hear that, it used to send shockwaves down your back and stuff. It was, but in reality, it was true. And at the age of 14 to 16, whilst you are on paper cream of the crop, you're still obviously miles off where you need to be anyway, whether it be physically, mentally, emotionally, everything. But yeah, touching on Lilleshall, obviously, for those that don't know, Lilleshall was basically, you would basically represent your country from the age of 14 to 16. So we were basically the best players in the country, so to speak. And you basically live in basically a massive development site. So yeah, it was you're obviously moving away from home at a young age. You're obviously starting a new school, and it was a standard comprehensive school as well. So how did you find your experience? Obviously moving away from home, you're now living in kind of rural Shropshire. You obviously moved from up north, Manchester way. New teammates, new school environment.
Like everybody else, it was tough. It was it was nerve wracking. You're leaving home, you're leaving your friends, you're leaving all your comfort zone, everything you know, and then you're put into a group of 16 kids, and you live in this sort of boarding house for 2 years, and you've got seniors who are a year older who are quite intimidating. You then have to go to a different school, which is intimidating again. So again, these things you don't realise, but really develop coping strategies and resilience and put you out there. And I think that's what sort of gives you the platform for what you need when you're older as well. I mean, I found it quite hard. And remember Alan Smith?
Yeah.
Alan Smith, he was there with us, and I think he only lasted a few months because it broke him down because of the pressure of it all. But, when I look back though, I do look back with fond memories, and I think to myself, God, it was amazing.
Yeah.
I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change anything again. It was a great experience.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we used to train every day, and literally the standard was just ridiculous. When I went there, I obviously when I came up against like yourself, like people like Paul Wheatcroft, Lee Cannaville, Scott Parker, and then the year
Yeah.
above Michael Owen, Wes Brown, like
Yeah.
Michael. It was just another level. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
So for me, it was an eye opener because I'd come from a scenario where I was like one of the best in my area, or like let's call it the Midlands. And even when I was at Nottingham Forest at the time, I was one of the best there. But yeah, obviously different level, and
Once you
everyone's
create,
bigger.
once you create that environment with best, and,
Mm,
and you've got the best players training against the best players and playing in games and doing it daily, you're only going to improve. That's the
mm,
culture that's created, and that's why for me, Lilleshall was so successful. If you look at all the players that have been through the system there, they were producing 3 or 4 internationals every year,
yeah,
full
100%.
blown internationals. So, and then I moved away and went back into the clubs. That type of process about to do things, and the clubs are
Mm,
doing it now.
yeah, 100%. Yeah, and then obviously we've graduated at the age of 16 from Lilleshall, and everyone goes their separate ways, and they join their respective clubs. And you went back to Man United, and then obviously talk to me about your experience at Man United. Obviously Alex Ferguson at the helm, and then
Yeah,
you've got obviously superstars literally everywhere.
yeah.
How was that for you?
Well, when you leave Littleshall, you just want to get back home, don't you? You've graduated and you think to yourself, just want to go home now and get a time at home.
Yeah.
So I went to United, and obviously you get there, and it's just at the time where everything started to really move on with United. They were involved in everything. They win the Premier Leagues. Some of the class of '92 were just coming into their sort of top level. And when you move there, you think to yourself, I'm in and around it, and it was amazing, training and being around all these top players. And sometimes we'd have like European games, and Fergie'd call the reserves over, and you'd have to be like set up like Juventus playing against that team, and I was inside you up front, and you're playing against the likes of Jaap Stam and Henningberg and Peter Schmeichel, and it was, when you look back, you think to yourself, what, it was unbelievable. The difficult thing was when we went to the clubs, you had to be a man at 18. You had to be ready at 18. And it's different now. You kind of like have an EDS from 17s to 23s. So you're given like another 5-year window to develop. Whereas for us players that weren't the biggest or the most physical, we had to be ready at 18.
Yeah.
So for me to get into United's first team, I was in and around the reserves, and I was doing all right and training, and and then Fergie said to me, he pulled me into the office one day and said, "You're going on loan to South Africa for a year." Because we just signed Quinton Fortune in a deal, and I went out there because he had a partner club, and at the time it was amazing. The experience was amazing, but in hindsight, if I'd have had good representation, because it was my last year, if you sent out on year to do the club a favour, they should have honoured you with a year's contract to come back, because you're out of sight, out of mind. And I went out there and broke my arm, and kind of like wrapped things up the year after they sold Van Nistelrooy, and I remember going into the office and Fergie saying, "Look, your time's limited and you won't get any game time, and there's players coming through, and there was that many forwards there at the time. That's the '99. It was the treble winning season. You could have filled the whole first team with forwards. Honestly, unless there was a bowler epidemic, you were getting nowhere near it. You had Dwight York, Andy Cole, Terry Sheringham, Diego Forlan, Eric Nevland, David Ely, John Greening, me, Alex Notman, Paul Wheatcroft. Honestly, it was ridiculous, the level. So it probably was a bad move to go from the national school to United, because as a forward, you're going into a group of some of the world's best. But looking back, it was a decision I made. I have no regrets. I was in and around some of the most exciting times the club's ever been through. So yeah, it was good but tough.
That's crazy. I mean, you reeled off what 6 or 7 kind of household names there, and you kind of look back and you think, well, what chance have you got? Like, it must have been so difficult. And I'll be honest, at that time, I didn't envy any of you guys, because I had my situation. My situation was slightly different, but I was at Nottingham Forest, and then like a few months into my apprenticeship, I decided to leave, and I ended up going to Leicester City. So whilst they were in the Premier League, it was just a different kettle of fish. And I just remember just thinking, like, I think we played when I was on trial, because I left Forest and I just kind of on trial. And I remember, I think I may have gone to Man City and we played you guys.
Yeah.
I remember turning up in the little minibus and I saw like you and Paul Wheatcroft like walking in. I was like, oh wow. And then I just had an absolute nightmare in the game. And I remember, I think Luke Chadwick played in the game, and he was
Yeah.
just running rings around everyone. And I
Oh,
was
he could run. He could run, Luke. Jesus.
yeah, it was scary. But no, I mean, to obviously be in that scenario, in that situation, coming out of Lucia and obviously being one of the best strikers in the country at that time, and then just to be involved in that environment must have been tough. And it's one of those things that obviously you're going to look back on fond memories and things like that. I mean, what was it like working, say, day in day out with Alex Ferguson and people like that?
Well, it was good because you were so close to it. There were the reserves and the first team, so it was very, very close.
Mm,
The first team trained by themselves, but then you had the reserves, and then every now and again you'd jump in, or you'd have to set up as a team. But
mm,
when you played your reserve games, it was full of first team players that weren't playing in the first team. So it was the atmosphere and environment was completely different than what it is now for an 18-year-old. I
yeah.
was sat in the change room, and I played in games, and you've got me and Ollie and Terry Sheringham and John O'Shea and John Curtis and
Mm,
all these players playing in the reserves that have played loads of Premiership games. So the level of the reserves for United was unbelievable just to get into that team.
yeah.
So yeah, it was an experience.
Nah, I can imagine. Well, moving forward, do you think, from an athlete's perspective, I know obviously we're both former footballers, but more so on a kind of generic approach, do you think there's more help needed for athletes when it comes to kind of transitioning from sport to another career? Maybe not having a plan B, but maybe like an extension of plan A.
Yeah, I think so. I think definitely. I think for like you don't realize how much time you have on your hands.
Mm,
You finish training, and I think that you've got to do something else. But there definitely needs to be some type of system or structure or support
mm,
that brings these players to do it, because they're not. A lot of them aren't going to do it on their own backs.
mm,
I think it needs to be built into some type of program where they have to do it. I know they do the college stuff and the other things, but for me, it's not, the danger's not 18 or 16 to 21. The
mm,
danger for footballers really is when you leave your club and you become more of an adult at 23, and
mm,
that window between 23 and 30 where you're in and out of clubs, you're in and out of contracts, you start to have a family, you start to get a completely different dynamic of your life. You've got
mm,
houses, mortgages.
mm,
So that's where I think the support needs to be. But then who steps in? Because
mm,
you might be on the club for 2 years. So it'd be
yeah.
nice if the Premier League could do something.
Mm. No, 100%. It's a tough one, and it's hard finding that kind of infinite or definite answer. And again, like you
We
said,
all know,
who
we all agree and would say
mm,
help is needed, or a bit of mentoring, a bit of support, guidance, definitely, because you can get lost in this system.
yeah,
Um, but where does an organisation step in? Because is it
mm,
any different for an actor? If
yeah,
you're an actor that's going for auditions all the time and you're not getting them and you're out of work, or if
mm,
you're a dancer, or if you do a different type of sport. So I know football. I think with football, I think everyone just thinks they should do it because it's in your face all the time. It's
mm,
top level. There's billions of pounds of money being spent. But
mm,
I just think some of the money could be distributed better.
100%.
I
Yeah,
think that could be
definitely.
channeled into another area.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, 100% agree with that. Um, in terms of advice, have you got any advice for any athlete? I mean, let's call it footballers. Any advice for footballers when it comes to transitioning from sport to another career and kind of what their outlook should be?
Um, Find something they enjoy doing
Mm,
that is non-football related, and develop a passion alongside what you're doing, and
mm,
so that you can maybe navigate into that type of area. I mean, I sort of, when I finished, I sort of just kind of like fell into different areas. It was like I didn't. I'll go to uni and I'll try that, and then I'll go and do teaching, and then I'll try that, and then very fortunate. Then I got into coaching, and I've been there 10 years, and I never thought I'd be a coach
mm,
or working in recruitment. So yeah, I would definitely tell any young player to, obviously you got the basics: work hard, stay focused, stay committed,
mm,
stay humble.
yeah,
But do a lot of do stuff away from football. Do a bit of research into what you like as a passion, and then see if you can plan for after football.
No, 100% agree with that, and that's amazing advice. Really appreciate you coming on today. Thanks for your time.
No
Hopefully, we'll catch up. Hopefully in the summertime. I know
it's good to see you. It's good to see you. It's been too long. We've got that reunion coming in. When is it? June?
Yeah, I think it's June. So I'm really looking forward to that. I can't wait to catch up with yourself and all the boys and that. If you want to just let everyone know again, like what you're doing, who you're doing it for, and if you are on social media, let everyone know where they can find you.
Yeah, listen, I work at Man City. I work in the academy. Helping develop players to improve. Done it for the last 10 years. So I don't know really where I'm going to go next. We just seem to be in a really good position at the moment, the way the club's working and developing academy players. So yeah, I'm doing that. I'm on social media, Facebook or Instagram. You find me on there. I'm not massive on social media, but I'm trying.
Yeah, same here. Me too. Nah, again, appreciate your time. Again, we'll catch up and we'll take it from there. All the best, mate.
Pleasure talking to you, Dan. Pleasure
You too,
talking.
mate. See you later, Fitzy.
See you later, pal. Take care, mate.